I'm kind of feeling the pressure of being the last person, so if y'all could all do me a favor, can we take like a collective deep breath? Thank you so much. So this piece was originally performed for some time without any mention of birth. Tonight, it will be reconstructed and performed without any mention of abortion. It is based upon the account of Eve Ensler, the author of the Vagina Monologues, being present for the birth of her granddaughter. I have always struggled with the experience of hearing this monologue, an experience that has remained constant over the years. So I figured I owed it to myself and all of you here to really get to know it and use it to tell my own story and the story of so many others. I was there when her vagina was opened. We were all there, the surgical tech, the latest resident, and I, and the medical director from DC with her fingers in the patient's vagina, feeling and pushing with her rubber-gloved hands, as she talked casually to us, interrupting herself to utter snippets of jargon like anterior, posterior, and asking the patient about her birth history, her allergies, and if she had any questions before we got started. I was there while the patient and I made awkward eye contact enough times for me to know what she was trying to ask for without words, and I held out my hand for her to take as she apologized preemptively for potentially squeezing it too hard. I told her that and anything else that she needs is what I was there for, and that despite my small frame, I've got it where it counts. I've made this joke with hundreds of patients by now, all at different gestation stages, all with a different story to tell, all vastly underserved as our political climate chips away at their medical options every fucking day. Every fucking day, y'all. And as I greet each one, I brace myself to make up for that as much as one person can. I brace myself to be whatever they need me to be at a moment's notice and without question. I was there in the room when mere minutes into the procedure, the cramps from the dilation rods made her cling to the side of the bed, made unfamiliar moans involuntarily escape her parted lips, and still there, after it ended, when she simply collapsed into herself, tears silently streaming down her face in an act of simultaneous resignation and relief. I was there when her vagina changed with each insertion from a curious, timid enclosure to an uncharted labyrinth, an open door, a steady red river that led to an empty room from which she was just rescued. I saw the emotions swimming behind the translucent walls of her retinas, how they held constant and how they changed. In a matter of moments, I saw quiet confidence, vulnerable worry, desperation for closure, all existing and coexisting in the separation between us, despite the superhuman grip of her hand on mine. Saw the amniotic fluid run effortlessly down the table in a quiet contradiction to the resilience of the person it was just released from. I was there when the doctor reached in with the metal tongs, and there as her vagina became a tense knot and then an empty vessel, empty from the nausea, anxiety, and anticipation, from the bonds of unintended pregnancy and what that means for each individual person, suddenly no longer the case. Then from the placenta and the remains, slipping out and into the pan. I saw the clots, the tissue, the blood, the vomit, the tears gently tumbling out of her eyes as she gripped my hand, my arm, my shirt, my face, my whole entire being, harder and harder. Saw the brief moments of connection in her eyes as I called out to her. Saw the little black mark indicating an experience not yet sought after disappear from the screen of the ultrasound machine. Saw through the vacuum tube to the contents. Saw it all just there in the pan. A different story and different sentiment for each patient as the medical director from DC kept turning and turning the aspirator, the sounds threatening to drown out the affirmations I spoke into her ear, my face mere inches from hers, containing us in a world of our own. I was there later when I just turned and faced her vagina. I stood and let myself see her all spread, completely exposed, knees buckled, eyes swollen, voice articulating apologies for a completely human response to an experience built up so unnecessarily by political warfare and fear of the unknown. I told her there was nothing to apologize for, and her arms suddenly became a wide fishing net, reaching out for me and any reparations she could secure for the stress and shock of such an experience. I think of my patients and the myriad of imprints they have left on me while we shared this room. I think of my second ever patient who wore her uniform during the procedure because she wouldn't have time to go home and change before arriving at her work shift. I think of the patient who had to have an assisted miscarriage for a child she desperately wanted. I think of the patient who had to, I think of the patient who had to give birth again after having to deliver her previous child stillborn and had decided that the whole process would be too much too soon. I think of the growing chorus of women who have summed up their reasoning with the same handful of words: I can't have his baby. I think of the women who disclose their entire thought process and justification for being there to me because they feel they owe me any of it, let alone all of it. I think of the teenager who just wanted to listen to Cranes in the Sky on repeat the entire time while telling us what food she was excited to go home and eat because her morning sickness would finally be subsiding. Girl, I bet. The woman who asked me if I thought less of her after it was over. As if I could, even if I wanted to. I clean up their blood after each procedure is over. I hold them close as it drips onto the floor, feeling a mutual sense of closure with the ones who take a moment to release their tears, or their words, or just simply their tension before they re-enter the world. I tell them not to apologize for it, that it's no problem, that I'll take care of it. I change the bedding, I answer their questions, and I wish them peace when I leave them in the recovery room. I carry each of them with me as I care for the patients that follow them, hopeful that each of them knows their worth as a partner or a parent, and most importantly, simply as a person. The heart is capable of sacrifice, so is the vagina. The heart is able to forgive and repair. It can change its shape to let us in. It can expand to let us out. So can the vagina. It can ache for people we have only just met and continue to ache for people we will never meet again. It can stretch for us, break for us, and bleed us into this difficult, wondrous world. I was there in the room. I remember. Thank you.